Hello and welcome to Study Abroad UK Insight series. I am your host Amit Chaturvedi. Today we have got experts who will talk about UK as a destination and their experiences. So stay tuned for more information. Thank you. Hello and welcome to another episode of Study Abroad Insight series UK. And I'm your host Amit Chaturvedi. With me today I have Andy Long from University of Bath. Thank you, Andy, for joining us.
No worries, thank you very much.
Today's discussion will evolve around students who are interested to look at exploring UK as a destination. We'll try and answer their questions, give them better understanding in terms of how best they can look at while applying for a UK university, and more in terms of their living and travel and other aspects. So thank you very much for joining us.
No worries.
Before I get into those questions, if I may ask you, in terms of if you can explain us your role and a little more about yourself, will help us to take it further.
Yeah, certainly. So I'm one of the team's undergraduate student recruitment managers. So that means I spend most of my time travelling around talking to students about applying to university and helping them make the right choice. I've got quite a lot of experience in this field. I previously worked at Lancaster University, where I worked both in recruitment and also their admissions team as well. So I've got a strong background in admissions and the application processing as well.
So that's an exciting role, but what is that you find most exciting within this role?
For me, the most exciting bit is being able to talk to students and help them understand what their next steps could be, whether it be studying in the UK, studying overseas somewhere else, whatever it is. For me, I really enjoy being able to help people with those choices.
How about this market, India? Do you think Indians are very excited to come into UK and study, or you have some other reasons you found out in this course of interactions?
No, I think Indian students are still very interested in studying in the UK. I think the UK is a very popular destination for them, partly because we obviously have a lot of Indian students who've been to study in the UK before and have remained in the UK, so there's a nice community of students. And the UK is obviously very warm and welcoming to international students as well.
So any three highlights as far as, if I say British education is concerned, would attract international or say Indian students to come into study in, at UK universities?
I think studying in UK university for Indian students, one of the main positives for them is the opportunity to do a one-year master's degree. I think a one-year master's degree is of real interest to students because obviously it makes everything cheaper for them, but it gives them the opportunity to get that master's done before then progressing into career. I think the location as well, the UK is very easy to get to and also get around, and I might be slightly biased, but it's got some of the most beautiful scenery in the world as well. And I also think the options of courses available as well. So whichever university a student looks at, there's always lots of opportunities, whether that be a BSc programme, an BA, an integrated masters, a placement year. There's millions of opportunities for students out there, and the UK is a great location to do that in.
There's a perception, Andy, that studying in the UK, especially undergraduate, is an expensive proposition. So what's your take on that?
I don't think it is. The cost of living in the UK does vary where a student studies, but one of the real benefits is that we're starting to see an increase in ways that students can support themselves whilst at university. So whether that be a scholarship, whether it be some form of part-time employment, there are lots of different ways that students can help reduce that cost of living for them.
But on an average, the amount of money people spend on maybe food or transport or accommodation, do you think is it really expensive compared to some other countries where students are enrolling?
I think it all depends on where the student wants to study and where they want to live. Particularly if they perhaps want to live and study in a big city, the cost of living will be significantly more than if they perhaps live in a smaller city or smaller town. And it also depends on where the university is located and sort of, if the university is within walking distance, if their accommodation is catered, self-catered, en suite, or as well if it's within walking distance of accommodation to the university as well. So I think it's comparable with lots of other countries when it comes to the cost of living.
So in your opinion, which are the most sought after programs or courses Indian students are looking forward to enroll for in the UK?
I think it really does vary. What we see is that more Indian students, particularly at an undergraduate level, are interested in programmes offered by things like School of Management, so management studies, international business management, things like that, as well as engineering programmes and also psychology. And we see very similar at a postgraduate level as well. I think School of Management and management-based programmes will always be the most popular for Indian-based students.
For the benefit of this audience, if you can help us explain the process of screening the documents when they make an application. So what does that look at?
Yeah, so the universities will always look at the student's academic potential. Whether that's undergraduate or postgraduate, they will always be looking for the academic potential of a student. Particularly at an undergraduate level, they'll be looking at both their 10th and 12th grade results, their predicted grades, and also their statement of purpose about why they're interested in studying that programme. And we also do look at the letter of recommendation provided by the school. At a postgraduate level, as well as looking at the overall qualification that the students achieved, they always look at the modules that they've taken, because as I mentioned, it being a one-year master's programme, we need to make sure that students are suitably prepared for the master's programme. And we also look at the universities that the students have been studying at for their bachelor's degree before joining the university.
Now, talking about the programs and especially the undergraduate and the postgraduate programs, what are the typical durations at the university, or especially largely at UK?
It's typically for postgraduate, it is a one-year programme. Some programmes and some universities may also offer the opportunity to do two-year master's programmes, and that will typically come with a work-based placement of some description. At undergraduate level, it does vary between a 3, 4 and 5-year course typically. A 3-year course is normally a bachelor's programme, a BSc or a BA programme, where a student will spend all 3 years studying. The 4-year programme could be a BSc or a BA, where the student will do a work-based placement, a sandwich year or internship as part of it, or they could spend the 4 years where they do an integrated master's. So that's still 4 years of study, but they graduate with a master's level qualification. And the 5-year is the combination of the year work-based placement and also the master's programme as well.
And what do you think is the ideal time for a student to start making an application or start preparing? How soon they need to start?
I think students can start preparing when they go, at least for undergraduate, when they go into the 11th grade and they start to think about, do they want to go to university, and if so, which country are they thinking about and what course should they be doing. Then as they progress through 11th into 12th, that is when they should have hopefully narrowed down which universities they want to go to, being ready to submit the application at some point from September onwards. Most UK universities are happy to accept applications from international students after the January 15th deadline that UCAS has. However, at that point they can close some courses. So some courses are extremely popular and they may close, the university may decide to close them to new applications post January 15th. So I'd always recommend for undergraduate students to be ready to have the application submitted if it's for a popular course by the 15th of January.
So that's about how soon they can plan. And another thing which is very critical for students is to understand how much of finances they would need. So what are the average tuition fees for an undergraduate and a postgraduate program?
They really do vary between institution and programme as well. Most undergraduate degrees will normally be between perhaps £16,000 up to about £20,000 per year of study. Some, particularly if students perhaps thinking about a programme like medicine, that could be in the excess of £25,000. Postgraduate programmes, again, you're looking at around the £20,000 mark.
And in addition to, of course, we understand there's a cost of living. So what's the average cost of living around?
It depends where a student wants to study. Obviously, an example like London will most likely have a higher cost of living, particularly with things like accommodation, than what another city might have. We would always possibly for a student, if they want to put a number to it, expect them to have about £10,000 on top of the tuition fee. So it's always about the tuition fee plus £10,000 would give student and parents an idea of the financial cost of the university. Obviously some students it may be slightly more, some it might be slightly less, and some may offset it by things like scholarships and part-time jobs as well.
Another aspect which most students want to know before they make an application is about the acceptance of the degree or the accreditations associated with the institution or the programs they're enrolling for. So which are the popular accreditations in UK? If you can just throw some more light on that.
Yeah, so the accreditations really do vary between course. Every course will have a different form of accreditation, and the same course at two different universities may have two different accreditations. It's really important for the students to think about what they're going to do after their degree. So, for example, psychology, degrees are normally accredited by the British Psychological Society. Students need to think that if they're going to have their employment in the UK, they need an accredited degree. But if they want to continue their employment elsewhere in the world, will that accreditation still be suitable for them? So it really is important when it comes to accreditations for students to think about that. Most universities, most courses are accredited by some form of institution, whether it be things like the Institute of Chemical Engineers, whether it be, as I mentioned, the British Psychological Society. It's all about sort of for the students, once they've narrowed down their course choice, to look into the accreditations a little bit more.
Which are the accreditations for the popular programs, especially for Indian students who go for either business or engineering programs?
There's lots of different ones that are available. Obviously, you've got things like the Institute of Chartered Accountants, things like that is an extremely popular program, and the accreditation that comes with that is extremely popular for students. I'd say that's sort of the main one that students will be normally going towards.
Another element which is important for a student is to start considering how best and how soon they can apply for a scholarships.
Yes.
So what are the scholarships available for students, and what are the general quantum of scholarship awarded to a student?
Yep, so from ourselves, obviously it does vary between institutions. For the University of Bath at postgraduate level, we have a number of scholarships available across all faculties. These are normally in the region of £5,000, and students can apply for those once they've received an offer from the university. So they've got to have submitted their application and received an offer from the university, and they can then start the application process for that. For our undergraduate students, we have a merit-based scholarship, so there's no application forms for it. Students just need to submit their application, and because it's merit-based, if their results meet the requirements, then they'll receive the scholarship. That one typically comes in the form of a first-year tuition fee waiver. So if a student was to achieve above 90%, they'd receive a £1,000 tuition fee waiver for first year, and if they were to achieve above 95%, they'd receive a £2,000 tuition fee waiver.
Apart from the scholarships, is there any other financial assistance offered by the university to international students?
There's obviously, we support our students if they require additional support with helping them find things like jobs. Typically, students can work up to 20 hours a week on their student visas, and as a university we have lots of opportunities for students to work, whether that be in the supermarket on campus or whether it be as one of our student ambassadors that show visitors around. There is also a hardship fund available, so if students find themselves in a very difficult financial situation, the university can sort of help, but that's much more sort of an emergency fund for students.
A lot of students want to understand what is a typical teaching system or a methodology adopted by UK universities, which, I mean, we understand it's different from in content to what we do here. So if you can throw some light, what's the teaching methodology at the university?
Yeah, so the university make sure that students really understand everything within their degree. So there'll be lectures where there could be sort of up to 100 students, and that introduces a lot of the concepts about what they're studying. That can be followed up with much smaller sessions like seminars, where there could perhaps only be 10 or 12 people who are in that one. And that's where you go into a lot more detail about it and you get into the nitty-gritty of it. Alongside that, you'll also have, particularly more for things like the science-based programs, you'll also have more practical sessions where students get sort of, the hands-on experience, the lab-based work and things like that.
Other thing which I know students would be interested to know is when they come into the university, and you spoke about the cost of living, but what are the options for them? Is it a shared accommodation, or it is like ensuite, they live on their own, supported by university? How does it work?
So again, it's one of those where it does vary a little bit. At the University of Bath, we have a couple of different options for students. So there is an option for shared rooms, so that would be 2 students sharing a room if they wanted to, or the majority of the accommodation is a single room. So you have your own room to yourself, and then you have the option of an ensuite accommodation where you have your own bathroom facilities, or you do also have the possibility of shared bathroom facilities. Alongside this as well, we do have the opportunity for students to have catered accommodation, so that's where they can receive 2 meals a day as part of their rent payment, or they can have self-catered where it's up to the students to provide all of their own meals. Whichever type of accommodation students live in, they do have kitchens, so it means that even if they are in catered accommodation and they have 2 meals a day provided, they still have kitchen facilities to make meals if they want to.
And is the accommodation guaranteed for international students?
At postgraduate level it is, yes, and then at undergraduate level it isn't guaranteed for everybody. It will be guaranteed if a student makes the university their firm choice through the UCAS application and meet all of the UCAS deadlines. If a student was to put us as insurance choice, things like that, we couldn't guarantee accommodation, but we'll always do our best to support students with that.
And you touched upon the UCAS process of application. Can you please tell our students how many applications they can make through UCAS?
Yeah, certainly. So UCAS allows you to make 5 applications. Those 5 applications can be 5 choices at 5 different universities. They can be 5 choices at 1 university. They could also be 2 choices at 1 university and 3 choices at 3 different institutions. The only difference to that would be if someone's interested in applying for something like medicine, dentistry or veterinary, and that is where a student can only apply to 4 medical schools, for example, and the 5th choice would have to be something that isn't medicine.
So is this application process free of cost, or there's a cost?
There is a cost to it. UCAS do charge you to submit the application. It's a small fee, and that is sort of just for the admin side of things with UCAS.
I know there are a lot of students who have a gap year in between. So what is your take, and how does university look at those students who have a gap year?
Most universities are very happy for students to take a gap year. Students can, when they're thinking about university in a gap year, can do it in one of 2 ways. So they can just take the gap year and then apply for the year that they want to start, or a student could apply for deferred entry before they go on their gap year. So it means that they'd theoretically say apply for 2021 entry to university during the 2020 admission cycle. The real benefit for this, particularly if a student is perhaps thinking about going travelling for their gap year, they don't have to worry about being in Africa visiting sort of whatever they're doing on their gap year. They don't have to worry about submitting their application then. They already know that their place at university is guaranteed and secure, ready for when they come back.
Another thing which I know students are interested is a lot in terms of the health and safety aspect. So of course we would like you to tell us more about the National Health Scheme.
Yeah.
And the overall safety of students, especially I know from the point of view of a lot of parents who would like to hear from you how safe it is for them to be in the UK.
Yeah, definitely. Students and parents are always really concerned about safety, and particularly if a student is moving across the country, let alone across to a different continent, they want to make sure that they are safe. The UK is an extremely safe location. University towns are normally very safe for students. Most universities have got things like a security and portering team. So that means that if a student ever has an issue, they're able to speak to someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The towns and cities themselves are also very well policed and very well safe and secure for students. The National Health Service as well is something that all students, including international students, will be eligible for through their visas, and that's access to health services across the whole of the UK, free of charge once they've paid for the contribution part as part of their visa. That means that if a student needs to see a doctor or worst case scenario needs to go to hospital, they will always be treated for it. Most universities, like the University of Bath, we have got our own doctor's surgery on campus. So it means that if a student does feel unwell, they can get to a doctor's quite easily. The only time that students will have to pay for things is if they need a prescription for medication, and also if they need to see a dentist as well. And again, the university does have its own dentist on campus.
Tell me, Andy, something about students who come from various parts of the world and study in UK. How do they found the local commute, and is it also easy for them to get hold of groceries within the campus or around campus?
It is, yeah. Most of our first year students will live on campus, so everything is within walking distance. If they do need anything from the city, it only takes about 10-15 minutes on the bus, so it means that students are really well connected in that sense. And that's also important for second and third year students who will typically live off campus. The buses are obviously very frequent, and it means that students can get between the city and the university quite easily. When it comes to groceries, we've got 2 supermarkets on campus that sell a mix of foods, both UK-based foods and international foods as well. And all the main supermarkets will also deliver to the university as well. So it's not uncommon to see a group of students put in a really big order with one of the supermarkets and it be delivered to them on campus. So it can be really easy for students to get everything that they need.
Another aspect which is a large number of students would be interested to know is in terms of internships. So they would like to hear from you what kind of internships are available for students, with which programs, and what are the typical duration of these internships?
Yeah, so at postgraduate level, there's only a small number of courses which have these sorts of internships. These include things like the data science-based programs, typically a year-long program. There's also some courses within psychology at postgraduate that they can do those sort of placement years. It's much of a bigger thing at undergraduate level. So at undergraduate level, for the University of Bath, all courses offer some form of placement, and that can be a work-based placement or it can also be a study abroad placement as well. These are typically just under a year long, so students may start in sort of September time and finish sort of June time. And the real benefits of these placements to students is that they get a year's work experience. They get to meet with companies, they get to experience what it's like to have a job and also network with people as well. So this really helps students when they start to think about what they want to do after their degree, because they've already set themselves up by having this really good set of skills and experiences from the placement year.
Now, are these internships paid?
They can be. You do find some students may work in a more charity and voluntary sector, and some will be paid. It all depends exactly on which course a student does and which company they perhaps work and do their placement with.
Does the duration of internship vary depending on the course, or it is like standard duration?
Standard duration sort of is a placement year for most things. There is a small exception to that. So some courses, for example, are architecture program. The placements for that are broken down into 2 6-month placements. But for the majority of students, if they opt for the placement option, that will be a full year of time.
And we do hear about the sandwich programs. So how different they are from these built-in internships to the program?
So typically the internships and the sandwich programs are very similar. It's that spending a year doing some form of extra work, things like that. It could also be a study abroad option as well. But that's sort of, is typically what we have, is that the students have the opportunity to get this experience alongside their degree, which will really help them when they start to think about their next steps.
So is it common for international students who come in to study, for example, in a UK university, would take advantage of your associations or tie-ups with other international universities and go for further maybe another different destination to study?
It is if they want to. It all depends on what they want to and which course they choose to do. So if a student was to join us on a languages-based programme, they would have a year abroad as part of that. And same as if they did one of our international management programmes, they'd have a year abroad as part of that. But some students will join us on other programmes and opt to do a year abroad instead of a year placement as well. And it's completely up to the student what they want to do.
Let me switch from this to another important aspect is the part-time jobs for the students. I know students can possibly work part-time and you can possibly share the duration, but how easy it is for students to secure a part-time job as they study?
It can be quite easy. There's lots of different companies that will be looking for students. Like I say, with Bath having such a large population of students within the city, it means that a lot of companies rely on the students for employment. And that can be in lots of different ways. Students may work in sort of more of a retail aspect. So like I say, we've got 2 supermarkets on campus. They'll be looking for students. There's a number of bars, restaurants, coffee shops, things like that. They'll all be looking for students as well. So it is quite easy. And we at the university have got JobLink, and that is where companies can advertise jobs for students. So it means that students can see in one location what jobs are about. And you'll also find that a lot of students, and perhaps international students as well, will work for things like admissions teams, recruitment teams, things like in more of a tour guide, student ambassador role, and also in things like social media bloggers and content providers, because universities really want to show potential students what it's like. And the best way to do that is ask our current students. So we use a number of bloggers and things like that to showcase what their life at university is like.
And how much time a student can work as part-time?
So typically they can work 20 hours per week as part of their visa during term time. Out of term time, they can work up to full-time hours. If a student undertakes a placement year, because the placement year is part of the degree and built into that, a student can work full-time on their placement throughout the full year as part of that as well.
And you touched upon the full-time work. Is it as easy to get full-time work or like part-time you said, or it's a little difficult?
It can be. A lot of things like supermarkets, the retail shops, it's quite easy when a student is perhaps going into a holiday period at the university to get extra hours if they want to. It's not uncommon that if a student is perhaps decides to stay in Bath over the Christmas break, they decide they perhaps don't want to travel home, that they could ask their employer if they can do extra hours. And a lot of students will take advantage of that.
Another thing which students are interested to know is, of course, we spoke about part-time work and the full-time job opportunities. What percentage of students end up working in their interest or their subject areas?
It really does vary because students will go and work in lots of different sectors. So we like to make sure that our students are as skilled as possible when they leave the university, and through things like the placements, the career support, that happens. And you do find that students who perhaps study a business degree may decide that actually they don't want to go into business. They've perhaps found that they've enjoyed working in perhaps as a student ambassador and want to work in an admissions-based role. So a lot of students they complete their degree and then go and work in a slightly different field. And because of that, and we will always support students with that, because students will want to do whatever work they feel is best for them. And so that means it's very difficult to give an exact percentage for that. But like I say, a lot of our students, typically over 80% of our students, will be in some form of employment or further study within 6 months.
You spoke about the job link. What are the other supports which a student can expect from a university to find a suitable job?
Yeah, so alongside the job link, which sort of shows things like the part-time jobs that are available, there's also career services at the university, which will help students if they're perhaps thinking about applying for a graduate job and are unsure how to complete an application form, or they're unsure how to submit a resume. So they can get additional advice and guidance, and there's a number of different departments at the university who can help students with that. And of course, with having a large amount of placements as well, it means that students can get interactions with companies when they come to meet with students about placements. They can ask them for advice and guidance on perhaps how to apply for a job or a placement in that particular field as well.
Let me ask you, what advice would you give to students to possibly make a better career when they land into UK? And of course, that's the objective. So what should they be concentrating upon?
I think the important thing for students is that they focus on getting skills alongside the degree. Lots of students are graduating each year with a degree. However, if a student does something extra, such as a placement year, or if they are perhaps involved in a sports team or a sports society, they get extra skills which can make themselves stand out. And it's really important for students to understand that the more time and effort they put into the extracurricular skills that they can get, the more employable that they will look. Particularly, like I say, when you've got so many students graduating at the same time, that if you sort of, one student has graduated with a degree and another student graduates with the same degree but spent a year working for KPMG, for example, or another large company, they then will start to look a lot more employable as a result of it.
I understand students' union are very popular amongst students. So what support the students' union lend to international students who arrive into the university?
So our students' union like to make sure that our students feel welcome. So we have an extended welcome week for international students. So that helps them find their way around the university, find their way around the city, and start to understand what it's like to live and study in the UK. They put on lots of different social activities throughout that sort of first week or so to help students meet each other from lots of different countries and lots of different backgrounds as well. They also support them throughout the year, so if students have got questions or they're unsure on something, they're able to then go and chat to the Students' Union about that. And as well as the Students' Union, the university has lots of support in other ways. So we've got a student support service who are there to help students with questions like finance, accommodation, visa questions, things like that. We've got dedicated teams dotted throughout the university who are there to make sure that students get all the advice and guidance that they need.
Is the student union involved in any kind of cultural initiatives or other social initiatives?
They can be, yes. So the Students' Union, within the Students' Union, there's a number of different clubs and societies, and these will put on lots of different events. So we have lots of events around religious festivals, so things like Diwali, we have a big festival. Our Asian Society will put on big events for that, and it's advertised across the whole university and open to all students. So even if perhaps a student isn't religious or doesn't follow that religion, they can come along to it to find out more and to interact with students as well.
Any tip or 2-3 key suggestions to our students who are listening to this and are inclined to study in UK?
I think my sort of top tips for studying in the UK would obviously be to do the research into the courses and also the difference in courses. So we've mentioned a little bit about things like the placement years and the study abroad programmes. Make sure that if a student is thinking about doing one of those, that they do apply for the right one, because they are slightly different course codes when it comes to the application, and you'd hate for a student to be really interested in a placement year and actually not apply for it. I think also students need to be prepared for the sort of step up from their 12th grade to university, particularly in schools. They may have teachers who may sort of be on their back a little bit, saying you need to submit your coursework, you've got exams coming up, you need to make sure you're preparing for it. At university, it's very much you as an individual and you as an independent person doing it. So it's important that students understand sort of that step up for it. And I think my final sort of top tip to students as well would be to make sure that you're prepared for the British weather. The British weather does change, so important to make sure they bring lots of different clothes for different seasons. You'll always need a big coat in the winter as well.
And I also have some questions which are Typical questions asked by students like when should a student start planning to apply to a UK university?
Yeah, so the application process sort of starts in September, at least for most students, starts in the September of the year before they're starting. So students that are interested in starting in September 2020, the applications will open in September 2019. So students need to be prepared and be thinking about their choices ready for when it opens and getting the applications submitted sort of around then.
Can you also please highlight us some key documents which a student need when they make an application?
So students will always need their predicted grades so far, so they may already have those from the school depending on which exams they've taken. They'll normally also need to submit a academic history as well. So for Indian students, that's typically their 11th grade and their 10th grade results as well. They'd also need to submit any English language assessments that they've taken. So for a student to get their visa to study in the UK, students have to pass a certain level of English. Typically IELTS is what they will study. Students can submit that when they submit their application at the start, or they can submit that at a later date, but students do need to be aware they have to sit that and will have to send and provide information for that.
And I think you understand rankings are very critical for students. So what is the best source for students to look at the rankings of various institutions?
There's lots of different ones to look at depending on what a student wants to see. The three main league tables in the UK is the Times and Sunday Times, the Guardian and the Complete University Guide. They're a really good idea for students to have a look at to see how a university in general is ranked in the UK. Obviously, as well as that, you've then got the QS World Rankings, which shows how a university is ranked globally. More important than both of those, I feel that students should also be looking at the rankings for their subject as well. All of the major league tables will give an insight into how good their subject is, and I would always recommend for students to look at that alongside the institutional ranking, because if an institution is ranked in the top 10 but the course that a student's interested in is ranked 50th in the UK, is that the right mix for the student? Or would it be better to go to a university that's perhaps ranked in the top 20 or 30, but their course is in the top 5 in the UK? So I think subject rankings is very important for students.
I think that's a very valuable advice. Students would like to understand what should a student do next after they have made an application.
The best thing that students can do is just prepare for their exams. Once an application is submitted, there's nothing else that the student will need to submit unless requested by a university. So students don't need to worry about not hearing anything, things like that. Universities have timelines and timeframes that they need to work to. So the best thing is once a student clicks submit on their application is to then, to an extent, forget about it until they hear back and focus much more on getting the grades they need for entry.
Any key challenges you think students should be prepared for?
I think students should always be prepared for sort of having an unsuccessful application. Obviously, we would love to offer every student a place at the university. However, unfortunately, we just can't do that, and we do have to say no to some students. So I think students need to sort of face the challenge of, if they are unsuccessful with their application, to think about what their next steps will be. Do they want to look at different institutions and apply through UCAS Extra? Do they want to then perhaps wait and apply through UCAS Clearing? Because there's always lots of different options for students, whatever the outcome of their application. And I think sort of just be prepared that as much as we'd love to make an offer to everybody, unfortunately we can't, and we do have to say no to some people.
We spoke about the part-time work, we spoke about them working during the off time. What's the possibility for a student of securing a good job once they complete the program they've enrolled for?
So it can be quite challenging, because obviously, as we mentioned, there'll be a lot of students who are graduating at the same time looking for similar work. The best thing for students to do is be prepared to start early for it. For postgraduate students, if a student starts in September, they need to be thinking near enough straight away about what jobs they'll be doing, because the application window for some sort of graduate schemes and some of the higher jobs can open in October, November time. For undergraduate students, they need to be thinking throughout their time at university about how they can get all the skills that we mentioned, and think about from sort of the start of their final year to start that application process and things like that. It's all about making sure that students are proactive with trying to find the employment. The employment is out there, students just need to be proactive in going out and finding it.
As we close, a last comment or last suggestion you want to share with our students?
I think from my experience of talking to students and sort of helping them find the right choice for them is that they need to do the research. They can't just expect to walk into an agent's office and be able to find out all the information. They have to be prepared to put in a little bit of time and effort themselves to do the research, to look at what courses are available, to look at which locations geographically they're interested in, and to look at sort of the rankings and reputations. Yes, our colleagues, ourselves, we can help students sort of with the application process, but it's up to the students to make that first bit and that first step into it and do the research.
Great. So before we move ahead, I know you come from University of Bath. Bath itself is a beautiful city. So we would like to know from you a little more in terms of your institution, the one you represent.
Yeah, certainly. So the University of Bath is a campus-based university. So that means that everything a student needs is located on one site. It is just on the edge of the city of Bath. It's a beautiful historic city. It's not a large city, it's quite a small city. Over 20% of the population of Bath is typically made up of students as well. So it means that it's a very student orientated city. And for me, the real benefit and the real luxury of Bath is our location. We're surrounded by green fields. From where the campus is to get to the city, you pass green fields, and from most of the accommodation you can see lots of greenery. So it really is just a beautiful location for students.
Fantastic. I think it was really interesting to listen from you, and I'm sure our audiences will benefit. So thank you very much, Andy, for coming in to us.
Thank you very much.
And sharing your experiences.
Thank you.
Pleasure. And I hope our audiences find it useful. For more information, do visit our website or come into our office. Also, please don't forget to sign our social media handles. Thank you very much. See you soon.